Welcome to Enthusiastically Spiritual.
Hey, welcome, Tom. I'm so excited about this topic today because it's been on my mind lately.
Me too.
I know it hasn't. This is my topic. You have other topics, but I'm so glad we're going to go here today because I really want to touch base and touch in around the subject of the young people who are in transition and are really having complications around who they are, being masculine, feminine, male, female, he, she, whatever you want, pronouns you want to use around this subject. And I've had a lot of things lately that's for myself I put together around my interpretation of what this is. So I want to really put that caveat out first, guys, is that what we share on this podcast is really the perspective of my perspective and the perspective of Tom's perspective. So, use discernment, please, with this. And if it doesn't resonate with you, that's totally fine. But this is just the perspective from a spiritual perspective. That's a lot of perspectives of what I want to share around this topic.
Yeah, for me, the spiritual perspective is usually a perspective that allows me, it's a freeing perspective. I feel better. I am more clear about how to work with people or how to work with situations. So once I have almost that eagle's perspective, from the bigger picture, I can relax. So I like to, I'm really glad that we have this opportunity to share that. So what we're going to talk about is, that confusion that people feel about who they are, and we're going to offer some possibilities, based on our insights that we picked up from guidance, and also what my true feelings, really tell me. So one way I evaluate what people share is I really just tune into how do I feel about that. And that's different than my emotional reaction. And there may be things in the world that I actually don't like, that sort of rub me the wrong way. But that's based on my programming and my concepts and, and some of it's truth. So the clear way to navigate through this minefield, at times of these ideas is, what are my true feelings telling me? Mm. How do I discern, what's a key word for that? So that's some of how we'll share today and our what we tune into is just what we're tuning into. It helps give me a perspective on what I'm working with, and what Teresa shares is going to give her a perspective on what she's working with. And we invite you to go ahead and get a feeling at times for what we're talking about when you're relaxed and clear, and really to relieve the pressure around a lot of these topics that come up today.
Sounds great, Tom. And so I guess the first thing I really want to share about is how, as a soul, and we go through our journeys, there's many of us are like, I don't really know who I am. I mean, maybe, you listeners can, appreciate that, or you can relate to that, because for myself, I've been there for many times. Like, I'm still like, what am I doing here and who am I? But as far as changing the gender, this is the new, really, it's a hot topic right now for what's been going on, especially I'd say probably the last maybe 10 years or more, 10 to 15 years. So when I was growing up, I wasn't affected by this. I knew people in high school that were gay, and usually they were men. I didn't know very many women at that point. And of course, when I went in the military, there was no one that actually would say, hey, I'm this or that, because at that point in the 80s, this was not something you ever talked about. But I do want to say that I grew up with a father who was, turned out to be bisexual. So he came out later in life, and, he obviously married my mom and had children and everything. But then later in life, he came out gay. And so, and looking back at that situation, he was very masculine, but yet there were some things when I grew up, like he always listened to Barbra Streisand. He loved show tunes. He loved Hello Dolly. I mean, just these things that like are kind of the typical, when you go to a drag show, you might see, some interpretations of Barbra Streisand or Liza Minnelli or Cher. And so my dad was into that kind of stuff, but he never came out and said, hey, I'm this, or like today, I want to change, my whole identity. And so, looking at that situation, growing up in that environment, and where things right now, it's quite different. And So I just really want to emphasize that first, that, I grew up in obviously a sensitive house too. My dad was very sensitive. My mom was sensitive. And obviously we were also, my brother and I. But I have nothing to gauge, how my dad felt inside. And I think that's a big component to this, is that as we're all going through our experiences, I can't tell you what Tom's feeling inside as a man, and he can't relate to what I'm feeling inside as a woman, because we're going through our own experiences. And that's the same and true for anyone that's going through, I want to now, change my identity to be a man, or I want to change my identity to be a woman. No one can judge what that soul is going through.
So, Teresa, what do you think is going on spiritually? Or when you talk about sensitivity, how does being a sensitive soul affect, that? How does this relate to what you're talking about?
Well, I'll tell you my perspective of it is, and I'll share this, and then I'll maybe answer your question, but maybe listen to me, or maybe I won't. No. So what I've been putting together for myself lately, in my own understanding spiritually, and getting a bigger picture, is, so I feel that a lot of these souls come in and they still are relating to the sex they were in their previous incarnation. So for myself, in my last lifetime in Germany in World War II, I was a man. And so I came in not too many years after that, and now I'm a woman. And so, as I grew up, I played, I did some boy things, some man things, and there's still some things I love, that are more masculine and feminine, but I'm not saying I want to be a man this lifetime, because I'm a woman. But I feel these souls that are coming in are so sensitive that they're still resonating with that essence of who they were in their previous incarnation. Now, again, listeners, this is my interpretation of what I've been putting together for myself, because I can relate to that. There are times, honestly, when I can relate to when I was a man. But this lifetime, I'm not going to, say, hey, now I want to, be a man. I'm just, because I'm in this body, I'm in this, reality as a woman this time. But again, back to, there's no judgment. Whoever you, or whatever you want to experience, that's okay. But that's my perspective. So how do you relate to that with incarnations and reincarnation, Tom?
Well, I think it's a great point that as souls, we're very sensitive, and we often have, thoughts, feelings that we're picking up from the environment, or they get stimulated in us, when we come into a new situation. You might say, like, a deja vu experience is an example of, I met you, Teresa, and I had at one point, as we were getting to know each other, this big deja vu experience that we, love to talk about. And it was, I don't have those every day or every month or every year, but I do remember when they occur. So my sensitivity was remembering something in the energy, you might say. So, interestingly, what comes to me is, I was listening to another podcaster one day, and he was sharing, this thing about reincarnation, I don't understand it. I don't know if, you come in one lifetime after another, or if you're living a lot of lives simultaneously. And I loved his honesty in saying that. And I realized, I prefer to think of reincarnation as a linear sequence, as a one lifetime after another. So that's my preference and my perspective. And those are some of my thoughts. The main thing I want to remind myself and everybody out there is that, really the soul has no sex, no color, no religion. So we just have tendencies and, in our vibration, I suppose. And when I'm working with someone who is gay, let's say, or is a trans, I work with the soul. I'm not going to, everything else around that is, to me, none of my business in a way. Because if you might say being bi or gay or whatever is a preference. It's just a preference. So for me, there's no judgment there. And everybody's a soul, working through their experience.
Yeah, so I want to go back a little bit to how sensitive we are as souls. And so, because what comes about that is that on a cellular level, I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this before, but I have. Like, we bring in things into our cellular memories that we
Hmm.
are healing this lifetime, that we are experiencing some this lifetime that may, come out of our physical bodies and or our energetic bodies. So being aware that that happens, and from experience, I mean, it has happened to me. So when I went through different things, like I'll say, I broke my arm ice skating a couple years back, and after I broke my arm, I realized that I was healing some wounds from the lifetime, who knows how many hundreds of years back, where I had my arm cut off and other things
Hmm.
happened to me. And so, this ability to remember in our cellular level also goes for the energy level. So coming back into here again, there are some people that, come in as little babies and they go, I want to be this sex. And there's some,
As a baby.
as no, yeah, there was one really on TV, Jazz, and she's amazing. But she came in as a boy, and when she was real little, started wearing girl swimsuits and dresses, and was saying to the parents, "I'm a girl." And that's what really one of the many things that really kind of tipped me off. And I said, "Oh, this soul remembers, perhaps, I'm not saying this is the truth, but perhaps when it was a previous incarnation, when it was a female in the last lifetime and came in because it was so young." Like, I've heard stories of people when they're babies and toddlers when they can talk, obviously, sharing past life experiences with, their grandparents or their mom. And there's a lot of this being documented that you could find on the internet about different young children that have come up and said things that they've experienced and places they've been, and they've been documented. So that's what comes to me about that, and about, cellular, as well as the energetic aspect of coming in and then going, now I want to be this sex because I resonate so much with that. And then there is something I want to share. Do you mind if I share it
Sure.
now? I did find a really good article in the Vancouver Sun, and this was published, it was last updated June 23rd, 2022. And it says, transgender people are far more spiritual, claims Vancouver study. And this is a study by Douglas Todd. And in this study, he quotes, or has a lady, her name is Lisa Salazar. She's a transgender master's student at the Vancouver School of Theology. And what she did is she did a qualitative and quantitative study of trans identified persons' spirituality. And some of the amazing things she came out with were that trans people are more than twice as likely to be spiritually touched by the beauty of creation, 7 times more likely to be thankful for blessings, 2.5 times more likely to feel selfless caring for others, almost 3 times more likely to accept others even when they do things they think are wrong. She says also that being trans caused or compelled some to shed religious conditioning and dogma. For others, being trans has made their spirituality more authentic and honest, and has made them become more compassionate. For others, their spirituality has intensified and become transformative. And this one's really good, Tom. And for the majority, being trans has made them feel more connected to God slash higher power, to others, and to self. And so that's back to, obviously, the beginning of this was transgender people are far more spiritual, claims Vancouver study. So I was super stoked when I found this one study. I mean, there's a lot of studies out there, but I was like, yeah, this goes to what we're talking about, being sensitive and coming in and going, okay, I don't feel right in my body. I feel like I should be the opposite. So what's your perspective on that, Tom?
Thank you for asking.
Thanks for asking.
And this is where when someone reads those kinds of things or makes those sorts of claims or statements, and I'm assuming that she did a proper study, and these were attitudes that she found, or that person found, whoever wrote this, article. Well, what do I feel? What do my true feelings tell me? And what they tell me is that these are very sensitive souls. These are souls who really pick up on thoughts and feelings of others, maybe a little more intensely than the average person. So one thing that comes to mind and that Spirit has suggested when I've evaluated this is that where the issue can, become an issue for a soul is when I feel confused about who I am or what I've come to do. And this goes for all kinds of, as you said earlier in the episode, all kinds of scenarios, not just in the transgender thing. But this is a good, example of what we're talking about. People often they share about feeling confused about this or that. The main thing is feeling secure with whatever you decide. And otherwise, it's a game. It's like a decoy from who I am and what I've come to do spiritually. So my sexual preference is really not the priority in my spiritual life. In my spiritual life, it's really has a thrust to be happy and free in various situations. So how do you feel about that, what I just shared?
Yeah.
What's your perspective?
Yeah. So what I want to share about that is how, the decoy, there's a lot of outer influences that are in the world right now. And honestly, in looking at history, there's always been outer influences. This is nothing unusual. But today it's magnified because there's more souls on the planet, because there's more access of media in a sense of on TV, on your internet, on podcasts, on all kinds of things. There's more information out there. And for me, sometimes I feel that information can be too much. There's too much, like Tom's saying, looking at studies. I mean, a lot of people do studies. A lot of people, do polls or do, finding out more information from people. But yeah, so really it does come down to the feeling. And so I felt with this study from Vancouver Sun is that I resonated with it because I recognize how sensitive these souls are. So Tom and I have done many fairs and metaphysical events we've told you about in the last 2 years or so. And the last year, I've really had quite a few trans people come up to our booth at different places, and honestly, some of them, especially the younger ones, are very confused. I can feel it. And I got chills. I say that. And so that's really when I get chills, everyone, when I say that, it's because that's confirmation, that spirit giving me a little, that's right, Teresa, for myself. Okay. So, you might hear me say it sometime. I got chills on that. Well, that's what that means. Is I've got just a little hit from, spirit going, yep, that's right, Teresa, for you. And so, feeling what I felt with some of these souls, and like I said, they were younger people. They were in their, like late teens and 20s. And honestly, I mean, I was so happy that they stopped by our booth and were inquiring more about the spiritual part of who they are, because that's so exciting. But they were very confused about who they are, and in there, and I can feel it, like, it's like in their body, right? They're just a lot going on. So what would you like to share about some of the experiences we had at events, Tom?
Well, and they tell us they're confused. I mean, they say,
yes, right.
The main thing that, comes to me is I accept everyone where they are at. And I have no preconceived idea, although I was raised to have preconceived ideas about this, but at this stage of my life, I just accept people where they're at. And if a person wants to be confused, and I'm not saying everybody's confused, I'm just saying that's okay with me. I'm here to provide a service. I'm here to live my thrust. I'm here to be happy and free. So I'm not going to get in my thrust. My thing is not to get caught into that confusion, because, and here's what I really mean by that, is that I don't care what you are in terms of your gender. I'm here to be of service to you. How can I help? What areas would you like to clarify? How would you like to build a better communication with your guidance? So that you can stand on your own 2 feet and be happy and free too.
Yeah, as you're saying that, the issue around this whole transgender and sensitivity hits my heartstrings because of my dad.
Mhm.
Because when I think back to his life, and it ended really young when he was 46. He actually died of AIDS and there's some alcoholism and things that he did to his
Tendencies
body,
there, yeah.
tendencies. Yeah, he had a lot going on. Put that much, and I'm sure a lot of confusion. So it pulls on me and my heart because of the fact that I recognize, or I feel for, who knows what my dad was experiencing. Who knows, what the turmoil he had going on inside of him of, who am I? And what am I here doing all this? And looking back at it, I could feel it through different times of my life. When I was a child, there was some confusion, and I picked up on that. And so bringing this to light and bringing this information forward for anyone out there who's dealing with, a child, a young adult, maybe even, honestly, even maybe someone you love close by that's older, that's, going through a lot of this. It's just having a different perspective. And like I said, since Tom and I are doing this around, obviously, spirituality, it's bringing in that spiritual piece that maybe you haven't thought about, or maybe you haven't even contemplated, because who sits there and goes, well, let me think about a past life, and that might be part of it, or, this aspect around being a sensitive soul. But this is a really big topic because of the fact that there are so many people right now who are, I want to say, afflicted is the word, not affected, afflicted with this confusion of who they are and how to move forward as into the world today.
Yeah, I think the main thing is that, I respect wherever I'm at. If I feel a certain way, it's important that I start to discern, are those my emotional feelings? Are those my concepts? Is this a tendency I brought in? Those of us who, people who have lived many lives probably relate to some of it. What strikes me as you're sharing is that you probably mastered that element of being that confused or unsure or whatever. And I think the key thing I want to share with people out there is that if I'm thinking I'm confused and I indulge in that, I am going to attract energy around me that is confused.
Mm.
And that doesn't help. If I really want to clarify who I am and what I would like to be, one thing or another, whatever way you want to go, be clear about it and make your decision. And it's got to come from your true feelings. So, who, from a spiritual perspective, there's no rights or wrongs or good or bad. It's just, good and better, and what I would do differently next time, and that kind of thing. So, but we all need to respect each other in our society. We need boundaries, and, what works for me, I'm not going to impose on other people. And, that's kind of a spiritual law. I mean, that's what we're here to kind of work out, make sure we have our boundaries and societies in place. We have, through religion and through science, we've come up with rules and regulations to keep us safe and to keep us respecting each other's rights. Now, when those things become an end in themselves, we tend to want to rebel when those rules and regulations become the end in themselves. But they're really just a means to an end, which is to, grow spiritually, to become more of who we really are. And I just want to reiterate, whatever way you want to go, if you want to be trans and if you're gay, great. I mean, just make a decision and go for it, and live that life, explore it. The thing is I'd say, just don't impose it upon me. I would say that's my spiritual perspective.
Well,
I don't
yeah,
like
that's
anybody
yours.
imposing anything on anyone, really.
Yeah, I get you, Tom. But
Yeah.
yeah, and I feel that when you're talking about, like, just being present and owning who you are, which, a lot of them are, right? They're out there doing their thing, and, good on them. And so, but it's just that, and knowing too that, like, our whole journey is about change. So, like, if, like, even for myself, like, I've changed roles through my whole life. I just haven't changed my gender, like, some, back and forth, but I've changed roles, and that's what we're here to do. Also, we're here to experience, the expansion, the contractions, the changes, the transition. So yeah, so I think that's a good place to kind of end it. Do you think?
Yeah, and I think that the key for me is I accept myself.
Okay, good. There you go, Tom. You accept yourself. Hey, everybody, Tom accepts himself. I accept
Whichever
myself
way.
too, yes. And I also accept everyone out there listening. And we both appreciate so much that you've taken the time to listen to this episode. And if you know someone that it might support, please feel free to share it and like and subscribe and, get the message out. Because again, this is just our spiritual perspective, but it felt real important and it felt like a good timing to do this because we always check in with our spiritual support team and spirit and see what's the thing to share about, what's going on spiritually right now. And this was definitely the hot one today. So
Thank you for letting us share.
and until next week, just remember that life is too short to not be enthusiastic about your unique journey.